Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. I'm gonna introduce this dude in a second, but I'm gonna read something that I wrote down that I heard him say on the TV. He said, "The world would be a much better place if at least once in their life everybody got to experience the kind of hunger that would make you suck the eyeballs out of a rabbit skull with much pleasure." That's how you said it, with much pleasure. Mr. Clay Hayes. Clay, who the heck are you? Why would you tell people that the world would be better if people understood the kind of hunger that made you want to suck the eyeballs out of a rabbit skull? What the hell's that about?
Well, I was very hungry when I said that. So I don't remember
like what,
when.
like you missed lunch or something? Boss wouldn't
No,
let you off?
like the kind of hunger when you're losing a pound a day type of thing. So I was on a television show called Alone, and just kind of give you an overview of what this is for the folks in your audience that aren't familiar with it. It's basically a survival type show, and they take 10 people and you get to pick 10 very basic items. We're talking things like a sleeping bag, a pot, a ferro rod for starting fires, just very, very basic things like that. They take these 10 people out into the wilderness and they dump you off all separately. You don't know where anybody else is. And with a camera case full of gear, and you basically self-document your journey as you try to make that place your home and stay there for as long as you can, or until you're the last person. And the last person out there walks away with $500,000.
And you won that episode or series.
Yep. I won that season. We're on season 9 now. They're just now recruiting for season 10. So that'll be launching here before long. But it's, when I said that quote, I'd been in the woods eating. They don't give you any food. You have to find everything that you eat or drink comes from the woods. And it's not an easy thing to do, is to feed yourself in that type of a landscape. That was a very harsh landscape where we were. There was not a lot of game. Not a lot of
British Columbia, right?
Yep. Yeah. We were on a high elevation, relatively high elevation, very large lake in British Columbia, all wilderness. And I was out there for 2.5 months. And so, for 2.5 months, I had no word from my family, and I had to like I said, all of the food and everything that I had to sustain myself, I had to find, either hunt, forage, fish, or trap for while I was out there.
So you brought a bow.
Yep.
You brought a sleeping bag. Did I see a tarp? Did you have a tarp?
Yeah. So the tarp is, you can choose to bring an additional tarp if you want to, but they give everybody a tarp. So that's like a standard item that everybody gets.
So at least you can keep the rain off your head.
Yeah. So their justification for that is to have a place to protect your camera gear, because you have a huge Pelican case that's full of camera gears, batteries, charging boxes, all of that stuff, so that you can, media cards, so that you can film all this stuff while you're out there.
Yeah, that had to be an intense. I do a lot of the footage stuff for our channels. My guy Drew, who will be editing this, is going to be listening, going, "What the f- is he talking about?" But I just thought about, even for a couple hour camera shoot, we might have 5-6 cameras and mics and, like you said, batteries, cards. So you were using solar chargers, or how were you charging this stuff?
So they send you out. I can't remember the brand of the big battery banks that they send you out there with, but they have a huge battery bank, and they
like
do
a Jackery or one of these big boxes.
Yeah, one of those big things. And so they do come back. They don't just leave you there, and don't check on you. They come back on occasion for what they call medical checks. And so I think the longest I ever went without seeing or hearing from anyone was about 3 weeks. And so that was pretty early in the season. but as the season goes on and people's body condition starts to deteriorate, they come back more often. And so towards the end of my season, which would have been, I think I left at the end of November, they would have been coming back every 7 to 10 days or so. And so when they come back to check on you to make sure that you're fit enough to continue, they'll swap out batteries, media cards, all of that stuff while they're there doing that.
Let's come back to that show. So did you see other episodes or seasons of this? What would make you sign up or apply to be on the show? I'm sure $500,000 was part of it, but.
Well, so we were talking before you hit record about you not watching much TV. I'm the same way. I don't watch TV. All of the reality programs that are out there, especially in the outdoor, survival type genre, I can't even watch because it's ridiculous.
Shit.
The stuff that they do is just like, if anybody that has lived that lifestyle knows that it's BS. And so I don't even watch it. But Alone is different because it is real. I mean, it's 100% real. They drop you off out there and it's up to you to sink or swim. There's no producer out there that's manipulating that story or making things happen,
There's not dialogue like where there's like interpersonal conflict with characters where get out of my hut, bitch.
Yeah, there's none of that type of stuff. I mean, it's like when you're out there, one of the things that they do before you go out there is they drill into your head, like film everything. Like, don't turn the camera off, just film and roll on everything. And so by the time I left, I had probably given them close to 1,000 hours of footage.
That had to be exhausting. Because even like, I thought about it, like I've gone out in the woods for a week or two at a time, backpacking trips, nothing like you're talking about, but I've done some winter camping in northern Wisconsin, and like the process of just getting some water when everything's frozen and melting snow is like work. Like, I want to take my gloves off, screw around with this camera gear and deal with it. Like I was thinking about the logistics of that. Like that had to be a ton of work.
It is, but at the same time, that's what I do for a living anyway. I mean, I have a YouTube channel. I make content. I basically get to play in the woods for a living and film all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was just a normal, standard operating, the way that I do things.
What's your YouTube channel, by the way? Good spot to plug that now, since we're talking about it.
Just Clay Hayes. Just get on there and Google that or type that in, you'll find it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you found out about the show. You're a normal dude living a life. You got a family. You live out in the West, right?
Yeah. Idaho.
And you just said, okay, screw it. I think I can do this. I'll send in the application or call whoever, send an email.
Yeah. I mean, it's, so from the first time I ever saw this show, and my nephew was actually the one that introduced me to it. He said, you got to check this show out. And so I watched it. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like that's legit. And so I had been approached by other television programs in the past, but I never got a good feeling about them. Like there were several times, like the casting people that I was talking to, like they already had in their mind who they wanted me to be before they ever called me, and so I wasn't interested in being a character. And so me. Exactly. And so when I first talked to the casting folks with Alone, they didn't want to manipulate that at all. They were just interested in who I was. And so I knew that it was a cool show. I knew that it was a legit. And then I also knew that it was a once in a lifetime opportunity to get to do something that very, very few people get to do. And it was a way to, like, I've been doing this stuff my whole life. And I wanted to know if I could actually do it, like in a real world, drop you off in the woods situation, if I could actually do what I had spent my life kind of preparing for. And I wanted to test myself.
what did you do? Like, what have you been doing? I want to come back to that point that you just made. But so, like, how old are you? Mid 30s,
I'm
40,
42.
42. Okay. A couple years younger than me. So, like, what have you been doing the last 25 years or so? What's your profession? You're a bow maker, a bowyer, right? What else
Yep.
do you do? Do you sell your bows, by the way, or you just do it for yourself?
No, I've sold a few, but I don't sell them.
You don't
I
want to
don't
go
know.
into production.
No, I don't want. I'm not interested in retailing bows. So I grew up on a ranch. I grew up hunting, fishing. Spent my life. I grew up in Northwest Florida. Spent my childhood in the swamps down there, and
That's
had
why when you were talking, that thing I read, I'm like, this dude does not sound like he's from Idaho.
yeah,
Suck the rabbits. Yeah. I heard some hill rot in there.
yeah. Um, and so I'd always been interested in this stuff and like primitive skills and bushcraft, survival, living off the land, whatever, I always say that I was just born about 150 years too late and 2,000 miles too far east.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always drawn to that and never really grew out of that. And I went to college at University of Florida. I got a bachelor's in natural resources and then a master's at Mississippi State. And I became a wildlife biologist and worked with the state of Idaho for 10 years until 2017. And then I left them to do what I'm doing now, my own, just with my YouTube
I wondered
channel.
what your background was because I've heard you talk about some plant life and different things related to biology. I was like, this guy didn't just read a magazine article on this. I could hear you talking about your I watched one of your YouTube videos the other day. You were talking about a plant that you were doing some fire making stuff. What plant was it? It was a small tree.
Oh, the elderberry. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. So you just you worked for 10 years doing that as a biologist?
Yep. Yeah. I was a wildlife habitat biologist in Idaho. And it was a great job, but it was not like, I don't know. It's just my personality. I would never have been fulfilled, like completely happy working for somebody else. I always felt like I needed to build something for myself.
What's that job like that? What's that look like? What do you do all day?
Man, it really varies depending on who you're working for. I work for a state agency, Idaho Fish and Game. But then there's also the federal side of things, and it's very different if you're working for the feds versus state. But my typical day, like in the summertime, like I said, I was a habitat biologist. And so I worked part of my time working with private landowners, farmers, mostly around here. And this is a huge agricultural area around here. So I would work on like habitat restoration for upland game birds. I would do habitat restoration with farmers. CRP is a huge conservation program in this country, conservation reserve program. It's tied to the Farm Bill. I worked with that a lot. And then I would work as a state employee. I was like inserted into like project development teams with the U.S. Forest Service. So I was kind of a liaison a little bit with Forest Service on some of their timber management programs, just to make sure that Idaho's wildlife objectives were incorporated into those projects. So,
oh, very cool.
Yeah,
very cool. So you left that job, and what do you do? What did you do after that? Just got into the YouTube stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I uploaded my first YouTube video, I think in like 2008 or so. And so I was doing it, the whole time I was working for Fish and Game, but it eventually got to the point where like I was working so much. I'd go to my job and I'd work 40 hours a week, and then I'd come home and I would, I'd be making videos, I'd be responding to comments. I had a website going. And so it was really unsustainable to do both things. And at that time, and by 2017, I was making a fair income on YouTube. And then, the books that I'd written, I was doing some freelance video production, stuff like that. And so I was making a fair income with only like maybe 10% of my time. And so I figured, well, I mean, if I can do this with 10% of my time, I know that I can make a go at this.
If you put the screws to it, and
if I Yep. If I focus on it. And so in November 2017, I just made a leap of faith, walked into my supervisor's office, gave my 2 weeks notice, and my freaking heart was in my throat, just boom, 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 because it's like you're jumping, man. You're jumping and you don't know, there's no safety net,
I'm
right?
assuming you were married at that point, right? You had kids.
Married, 2 kids. Yeah.
So your wife was on board with it.
She was kind of, she was nervous, like real nervous. Um, but I knew that even if I couldn't make a go with the YouTube and the books and stuff like that, like I could go build barns. I could work. I wasn't worried that we were going to like lose the house and be homeless. I knew
Sure.
that I could make a living doing something, but I also knew that I had to try it. I had to know if I could do it. And so I jumped, and I mean, it's been awesome. It's worked out really good. I think within 2 years, I doubled the income I was making working for the state. And I mean, like I said, it's been going really, really good.
There's this lie, I think, in the modern world that we need to like follow this set course of action in a career. Like you did the college, which there's nothing wrong with and great. I mean, you probably wouldn't be where you were without it, especially some of the skills that you have out in the woods. But just talking to a family member, he's off to college. What are you studying? I don't know. Like you're just going to go and develop $100,000 of debt. And you don't even know what for. Like I'll figure it out when I get there. That just seems like mind numbing to me. It seems ridiculous.
Yeah. I think, and I've said it, 100 times, I think there's these society's expectations of what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And there's a tremendous amount of pressure to like keep people on these well-worn paths, and like I said, when I started down that path and I was going, and it would have been very easy to settle into another 20 years of, as a state employee, very easy. And that's what most people do, because there's, what's coming. There's a direct deposit that shows up in the bank. You've got health insurance. I mean, it's a very safe, secure way to make a living and to live your life.
No, thank you.
But yeah, I wasn't, I wanted my freedom more than anything. And so I decided to go ahead and take the chance, see if I could make a go with YouTube. And now like I said, it's worked out absolutely fantastic. I mean, I can work from anywhere in the world as long as I have an internet connection, like once a month. I mean, like next month, September, we'll pack up the whole family. We'll go live in a wall tent until I kill an elk. So we're going to elk camp next month, and we'll literally live in the mountains and we're hours from anything. And we stay there for the whole month if needed. And that type of freedom is pretty uncommon these days.
And a connection with your family. It's not the come home from work, take the tie off, spend a few minutes talking, turn the TV on. You're immersed in your kid's life and the natural world. That's important shit.
Yeah. I mean, we've been incredibly, incredibly fortunate. I mean, I've been for the last 3 days out here behind the house working on a video with my youngest son. We're building he wanted to build a shelter. So we're building an all primitive shelter with a fireplace and all that stuff in it. We're making a video out of it. So, I mean,
how old is he?
He's 10.
Okay.
Yep.
So he's getting exposed to this concept of following a passion and making it work, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Yep. I mean,
go ahead.
I can't remember what I was going to say now. Go ahead.
What did people say? Like friends, family, dads from school or whatever, people in the community when they heard like, oh, Clay's going off in the woods to be on this show. I'm sure you had some people say some shit.
You know, they didn't. But the
No.
big, I mean, you can't tell anybody basically. You got to sign a pretty
Oh,
lengthy NDA before you go on there. And so the only people that knew was my wife and kids, and then my folks, my parents. That's the only people that knew. And actually, it's kind of comical. So I was gone for 2.5 months. And so my wife, Liz is here taking care of everything. And she's, has a social media presence. And so she's posting with her and the kids. And there were people actually that thought we got separated because I
oh.
wasn't in any of the posts.
What did he do?
Yeah.
That's funny. How about when you quit your job in 17? Did anybody have any
Oh,
negative
yeah.
input? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, um, I don't want to name any
I'm not
names,
saying
but
name Bob or John or mom. I'm just saying what talk about that a little bit. Did that
I mean,
affect?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was called a bum. Um,
Really?
oh yeah. Like, what's this? What the hell are you going to do? You can friggin' hunt all the time? Well, yeah, that's what I do. I go hunt and I make videos about it.
I got a buddy in Montana that's a sheriff's deputy. I don't want to give too much specifics because it's a small sheriff's office, but he gets a lot of hate from people because he's crafted this life where he goes and does his day job with the sheriff's office and he does a great job, but he manages to go hunt elk, whitetail, moose, bear. He goes on like amazing fishing trips all over the place, goes on these amazing backpacking and snowmobiling and motorcycling and boating trips. And people like that's kind of the same thing. You just screw around all day. And he's like, kind of like doing what I want to. And it's not
Yeah.
like his bills aren't being paid, but people bust his balls. And I'm like, they just hate the fact that they haven't sorted out how to enjoy their life.
Yeah. I mean, for me and my family, like I said, our freedom was a one of the top priorities from us. For
Okay.
me, it's my family and my freedom. I don't want anything to impede upon those two things. And so I, and that's one of the reasons, like I could make a lot of money selling bows. I don't want to sell bows. I don't want to be in the shop making bows, every day. I want to do other things. I want to go camping with the kids. I want to go build a fort in the back here with my youngest son. And so I turn down lots of money all the time because they're asking me to do things that I don't really want to do because those things would impede upon that priority of mine, which is freedom. And a lot of times people put security at the top, security above their freedom. And so they end up in these jobs that are secure. I mean, they have a steady paycheck coming in, but they're not, it's not something that they really want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
Mm-hmm.
just what your priorities are. And then taking steps to realize that, whatever that goal is.
So much of that I think is programmed into us in our childhood years. Like, what did mom and dad do? What did grandparents do? The people around us, that you learn these patterns from the people that raise you or influence you, and then you just follow
Yeah.
suit. It's hard to break that mold.
I th- you know, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And another way that I've been fortunate is like I said, I grew up on a ranch. My dad, I think when he was in his early 30s, he was actually working at a factory and got passed up for a promotion that he should have got for like his supervisor's nephew or something, and
Okay.
said, you know what, to hell with that shit. And he always had a passion for horses. And he said, you know what, I'm going to become a horse trainer. His dad told him it's a terrible thing to do. You're never going to make a living. He decided to do it anyway. He spent, oh, I don't know. He spent several years living in his barn with his horses, but he made a hell of a living. He's in the National Cutting Horse Hall of Fame now. Very well
Wow.
known cutting horse trainer. I mean, and he did it because that was what he wanted to do. He took a leap and he made it work. And so I had that, I didn't have
Blueprint.
yeah, exactly. Yep.
So you grew up around horses.
Yeah. Yep.
You can ride.
Horses.
You can ride a little bit then.
A little bit. Yeah. Horses were always around and I spent a lot of time on them, but it was not something that ever really stuck with me. I was in high school rodeo association and went to nationals twice, and actually finished in the top 10 both times I was there. But it was just, I always wanted to be in the woods, and horses just kind of get in the way of that sometimes.
Do you use horses when you go out, like on this elk hunting trip? Do you pack stuff out, or do you guys?
We did. When I first moved up to Idaho, I had horses, had 2 horses, and I would use them on pack trips like that. But now, since I left Fish and Game and started doing our own thing, we split our time between Idaho and we'll spend about 3 months a year in Florida. And so it's having stock doing that type of thing is just not possible. Yeah. There's nobody here to take care of them.
You'd have to drag them with you or leave them somewhere. Sure.
Yeah.
Let's go back, talk about the show a little bit. I don't want to talk maybe so much about the nuts and bolts of the show, but you seem like a pretty cerebral dude. I love poetry. I love literature. And you multiple times, what made me reach out was that one quote. I thought, well, that's compelling. Let's talk about that. But you had all kinds of fun little poems and things like that. I forget the one you said. You wrote or spoke something and then said, if somebody dictate that and give it to me when I get out of the woods, I'd appreciate it, because you didn't have probably a pen and paper or something at the time, or you're scratching it on bark. But it seemed to me like you must be the kind of guy that's penning things in your head as you're going about your life.
Yeah. I keep a Word document on my phone that's just like a running meditation. When I have something that pops into my head, I'll just jot that down. And I mean, there's many times I'll be sound asleep and something comes into my head and I have to get up and write it down, because I know too many times I've said, I'll get it in the morning. And then you get up in the morning, it's not there. Mm-hmm. And so I just have to, I have to get it down right then. But that's that was one of the things that really sucked about being out there is, I mean, hell, I could have written a freaking novel, I could have written so much good work while I was out there, but they won't give you a pen and paper. And I actually tried to make a pencil when I was out there. I took a stem from a shrub and hollowed it out, tried to cram it with charcoal, but it didn't work.
What would you have wrote on? Bark?
What? Yeah, exactly. And I could have scratched stuff with my knife, but I mean, that would be by the time you get 3 words.
Right.
It's like gone.
Yeah. And dull the shit out of your blade doing it. That's funny. Do you remember what the thing was that you asked? Maybe even the concept of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was something along the lines of, it was about adventure. Like,
yeah, you talked about it. Go.
I don't remember the quote exactly, but it's,
I figured some follower would have
there's been multiple people that have sent it to me, but I can't remember exactly what it is right now off the top of my head. It's something about how adventure calls us forward, and like the idea of that whole thing was like, adventure's not free.
The internet's pretty badass. This took me one second to I typed in Clay Hayes adventure and it pulled up. That's ridiculous. There's a place called adventure that lives just on the horizon. It calls us forth over the next ridge and around the next bend. It's where life's good stories lives. The ones that will be told around campfires for a lifetime and more. But adventure doesn't give up her secrets easily. She keeps them hidden from all but the most willing to pay the asking price. Thought that was pretty cool. You're sitting there just daydreaming, thinking about the totality of your situation.
Yeah, you get a lot of time to think when you're out there. And it's like discomfort is, that pain and discomfort oftentimes is the price that we have to pay for life's most valuable experiences. and lessons. And that's kind of what I was getting at there. It's like when I'm sitting on the side of a hill on an elk hunt or a backpacking trip or something, or climbing up a hill, your quads are burning, your lungs are burning. I mean, you might be getting rained on, and that moment might really suck, but that's the price you got to pay to be out there to experience all of the other amazing things that you get to experience out there. And, when I was out there in BC, I mean, starving, cold, it's like, that's the price that I had to pay for the lessons that I learned out there, and to be able to see a mountain lion stalk up behind me at like 10 yards to get charged by a grizzly bear. I mean, those are some pretty freaking awesome experiences.
Yeah. Most people that had the grizzly bears and mountain lion experiences were freaked out. You were like, yeah, I'm going to go track this thing. You grabbed your bow and went and tried to track that cat.
Yeah.
Did you see it again?
I never did. I never saw it again. I really tried to catch up with him. But I saw his sign several times, but never caught up with that cat again. I was really trying.
You would have eaten a cat, huh?
Absolutely. Hell yeah.
Yeah. You shot a deer. How far in to the 70? Was it 74 days?
Yeah. Yeah.
How far into the 74 days did you get that whitetail?
So that was on day 21 or 22, or something like that. And I had, so I'd caught some fish like that first week or so. I think I'd caught like 4 or 5 fish that first week, and maybe the first 2 weeks. But I had filleted them and smoked the fillets to preserve it. And by the time I shot that deer, like I had stocked up a little bit of fish to just to have something to eat when the times got lean. And by the time I shot that deer, I was down to my last 2 pieces of fish. And so it was like getting critical. I needed to make something happen. And ended up shooting that deer with my bow. And it was like, I mean, I've taken a lot of animals with a longbow. I've never reacted like I did or felt the kind of emotions that I did when I saw that little buck laying on the ground. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. It was like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders, because I didn't have to wonder where my next meal was coming from. And that's a pretty stressful thing, is not knowing where your next meal's coming from.
Yeah, there's a lot of calories laying there on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was interesting about that show, and it was kind of like what's a good way to look at it? It's kind of like a cross section of society and the choices people make. As I watched it, the one gal spends a bunch of energy building a really elaborate shelter, and then does not have the energy or the wherewithal to go out and find food. Somebody else puts all their eggs into the basket of fishing or foraging, and rather than maybe having a more broad or holistic approach to this living thing, right? Like you had, I think you had a pretty decent shelter. I remember looking at it. I'm a carpenter by trade, so I had a critical eye to some of that stuff. I'm like, what the hell are some of these people doing with this stuff? but like, talk about that a little bit, because I'm sure you get 4 fish and you're probably thinking, man, I could just come down here every day and just start banging out fish, and I'll smoke and dry these suckers and I'll be sitting pretty. But then week goes by and there's no fish, you're screwed. So talk about that a little bit. Like, how did you decide where to put your energy? And you can't go home and just get a frozen lasagna to get more energy. So that had to be a juggling act.
Yeah, it was. And that is the exact thought I had so the first day that I went fishing, I built a fishing rod that I could cast and retrieve and all that stuff. The first day I went out with that, I caught 2 big fat trout. I was like, damn, I just do that every day. I'm good. Well, I did that one more time. Yeah. I did that one more time, and then I couldn't catch another damn fish. And so I was like, well, shit, I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, and I wasn't seeing very much for deer sign. Very, very few deer. And so I was there for 2.5 months and I saw only 2 deer. So
Which,
that makes it,
not to take anything away from you for shooting that deer, but like when I saw that, I'm like, man, half of that's just luck that he walking around. I mean, I know that it's not staged, but they edited this to whatever footage you had, but like no animals anywhere, and he comes upon this little buck in the woods, like, and you had a shot. I think you spooked it, and he saw you, right?
yeah, he saw me, or I don't think he saw me. I think he heard me.
Okay.
But he didn't know what I was. And so he bounded off to like 40 yards, which is way too far for me to shoot my bow. But it was the right animal. And so it was a young buck, spike, which are pretty naive. And so I just stood stone still, waited. And I've been watching animals my whole life. I understand their body language. I can read what they're saying. And so, I'm watching this deer's body language, watching his ears. And at first his ears are both like, forward looking in my direction. And then an ear flicks back and I was like, all right, he's calming down. It's just like a cow or, a horse. If you grew up on a ranch, you know what I'm talking about. And then just a minute later, he puts his head down and starts browsing, starts foraging.
Munching.
Yep. And so I grunted at him, just, meh. And he threw his head up, and then he starts coming back towards me, and he gets all the way up to about 25 yards and stops with his head behind a tree. It's like, it's not going to get any better than this.
That's when you got down and grabbed an arrow, I think, or knocked an arrow.
Yep. And so, I made a good shot, but that, like, chance factors into everything that we do. And that was a huge break for me. I needed that break. But I also, it's 25 yards for me with the type of bow that I shoot, which is a handmade wooden longbow. I mean,
you guys listening, this ain't some like $3,000 compound with sighting systems and carbon fiber arrows and 8,000 foot per second. This is a stick with a string with another stick.
Yeah. But I shoot my bow here at the house just about every day. And so when I did have that opportunity, I was ready to make good on it. But yeah, I mean, that deer was the reason for my success. They would have probably pulled me for malnutrition had I not got a deer.
Yeah. You said one time during the program that, basically your metabolism, what you were given by the creator, the universe, whatever, it was kind of a detriment to you. Like there was another cat on the show that came in pretty husky, and he had a lot of calories to burn throughout the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You came in more built for speed in the water. How about that?
Yeah. Well, I weigh probably 153.
Okay.
When I first got contacted about going on the show, I started trying to gain weight, and it's not like the heaviest up until I started trying to gain weight for this. The heaviest I'd ever been was like maybe 163 or something. And so I, with the help of my wife, cooking and stuffing loaded baked potatoes down my throat, I was able to gain 20 something pounds. I went in at 180.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Tubbo couldn't buckle your pants, huh?
Yeah.
What did you leave at? What weight did you leave at?
So when I was in the woods, what did I come out at? When
you left after 74 days. Yeah. What was your weight then?
So I got down to 140, and I think I came out at about 142, 143, something like that.
So nothing terrible.
Yeah, it was, and I, like right now, like I said, I'm 153 or so. I think that, I don't know. I usually eat like once a day. And so I'm pretty lean, but I think even now, like if I were to go into the woods and live like a true hunter gatherer lifestyle, my weight would probably be about 145. I'd be a very lean 145. And so when I first got out there, they dropped me off. I'm way overweight for my body. I'm dropping over a pound a day. I mean, like just plummeting in weight. But once my body shrunk down enough, had lost a lot of muscle mass. And so, muscle burns a lot of calories. And so once I got down to that 145-ish, my weight loss really slowed down and my body started to reach that equilibrium. So yeah, I don't know where I was
travel around the world. I travel around and you go to societies. Like I spend a lot of time in Costa Rica, and the part of Costa Rica we go to is one of the blue zones, the area, one of the 5 areas that have been identified as some of the longest living people on the planet. The Guanacaste Peninsula on the Pacific coast. These folks are all built like what you're talking about. They're like, the guys are farmers or ranchers or even the shopkeepers. Most of them surf and play soccer, and they're very active, but they don't overeat, and the foods that they're eating are not packing excess calories on. Like that's what I think humans are supposed to look like anyway. We seem to operate better.
Yeah. I like when I had all that extra weight on me, it was I was huffing and puffing just walking up a little hill.
I believe it. I was doing some kettlebell exercises last week, and I was just doing some goblet squats with a 45-pound kettlebell. And I thought about it, like I'm only about 190 pounds, and there's plenty of guys I grew up with that have packed 30, 40, 50 pounds on since like high school. And I thought, God dang, like just this extra 45 pounds doing these squats sucks. Like I would hate to have like 30 or 40 pounds of fat on me just to bend over to tie your shoes. It would be exhausting. I don't dig it. I don't dig it.
It's like walking around with a loaded pack on all the time.
All the time. Yeah. And I guess you get used to it, but then that's why you're mouth breathing as you're trying to pick up the groceries or whatever it is you're doing. So you're out there. I thought for a moment watching that like, oh, this dude's going to quit. You had like this moment where you're, I'm sure there was many moments, but the editors chose to put this segment in where you are missing your family. You realize that they're super important to you. Of course, you probably knew that before this sequence gets filmed, but you're kind of having a moment. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that people don't really get from the show is once they drop you off, there's no word at all from home. They don't tell you anything. And so I hadn't heard from my wife by that time, I think, probably almost 2 months or so. And on top of that, this was right at the height of COVID when we did this thing. And so when we got into Canada, we had first a 2-week quarantine, and then we had a 10-day orientation period on top of that. And so before we ever even got into the woods, I'd already been gone from home almost a month. But I was missing my family from very early on. And there were many times when I didn't want to be there. I wanted to quit. But I was never going to. Like there was never a time, and a lot of people have said that, oh, you made me nervous. I really thought you were gonna tap the button, but that's editing. That's just the way that
that's kind of what I figured like they created this little crisis for the viewer. Yeah. So you weren't going to bitch out, but you were this missing home, missing your wife, missing your kids.
Yeah. So that was there was a time period about like, I'd say day 50 to day 60 when I just got like I was flat out depressed being there. So there was several things that helped contribute to this. One is the days. By that time, the days were very short. We're talking 7-8 hours of daylight and very, very long nights. The weather was getting very crappy. And so there were several times when I would be like hunkered down in my shelter for days at a time as the storm raged outside. I might go out for like an hour in the morning to check my snares, but then, you've got 23 hours hunkered down in this dark cave of a shelter. And then you're literally starving. Your body is withering away. I don't know how many calories a day I was eating with my deer meat, and I'd found some mushrooms and things like that, but it was not enough to maintain my weight. And so
were you rationing that deer meat? Because you could have just engorged yourself until you were nice and full. So how much did you allow yourself?
Like a handful of jerky a day.
Okay. All right.
So a couple hundred calories maybe. But you've got those three things. And then on top of that, you haven't heard from your family. And I got like just downright depressed. And like I said before, one of the things they drill into your head is just roll the camera all the time. And so I'm sitting here in my shelter, camera's rolling. And one evening I'm sitting there bitching and moaning about everything. Freaking weather sucks. I'm hungry. I don't have enough food. And I'm basically whining about my situation. And I go to bed and I get up the next morning and the thought crosses my mind that all of this is getting recorded. And the thought crosses my mind of when I get home and watch this show, my two boys are going to see this.
I know where you're
They're going
going.
to see me bitching and moaning about shit that I can't control. And that thought of them watching that, just like that, snapped me out of it. I said, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it was like, that's one of the things that I learned out there is like perspective. How we view our situation is so freaking powerful. There was nothing about my situation that changed. I didn't have any more to eat. The weather was still shitty. The days were still short. Everything was still dark. I was still cold. But for those 10 days, I was allowing myself to suffer. I was basically creating my own misery. But when my perspective changed, all of that suffering ended just like that, just because I shifted my perspective on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that day 60, I was like, my job is to set one of the main reasons I came out here was to set a good example for my boys. And so that is what I'm going to focus on from here on out. I'm going to experience whatever time here I have left the best I can. And that
perspective is reality in so many ways.
Exactly. Yes, it is.
I'm sure you've read Viktor Frankl's book.
Yes. That was one of the things that I drew on multiple times while I was out there. I mean, it's so easy in so many people's lives, it's easy to get focused on our own experiences and how things aren't going right for us and and get into that situation where you start feeling sorry for yourself. I mean, I was doing it from day 50 to day 60. I was feeling sorry for myself. And, concurrently with thinking about how my boys might view this, I'm thinking about the experiences that Viktor Frankl wrote about in his book, A Man's Search for Meaning. I mean, there have been so many people in history that have been subjected to unimaginable horrors and have made it through those things. That who the hell am I to bitch about not having enough to eat? When all I would have to do is tap a button and I'm going home and I get a freaking cheeseburger.
Right. You're not locked up in a concentration camp or whatever the horrible thing is. You could stop it at any moment.
And so it puts our own suffering in perspective when you have that type of, when you can draw on that type of experience from someone else.
It's amazing I shouldn't say we all, it's common knowledge that our thoughts direct the outcome of our day, our life, etc. But you get like trapped in that vortex of thought energy, and it's so hard to kind of step outside of it. I kind of imagine it sometimes like being in a windstorm, like you've got all this stuff swirling around you and you've got to kind of just like stop and like spread the curtain, and once you're out of it, you can make so many different or better choices versus continuing that. And it just ends up, that's when you quit. That's when you make bad choices in a relationship or in an argument or at your job, whatever, because you just let that eventually taint you to the point that you can't see anything else.
Yeah. I think sometimes you just got to be shocked out of that. And that's what that thought of my boys did for me. It gave me that perspective. So I was very thankful for that.
So you're back home. How did it feel? How long did it take till you went to the fridge and helped yourself and didn't think like, damn, this is crazy? Like, I'm sure eventually one day you got taking a hot shower or sleeping in your bed or pulling into your favorite burger joint at some point, or are you still like, oh man, this is crazy? Was this such a life altering experience, starving for that long?
It was pretty normal for me coming out. Like when you come out of the woods, they take you to, they don't just like put you on a plane and send you home. You got to go through, they have a nutritionist there that plans all your meals out. And they kind of build you back up a little bit before they send you home. And so I had kind of a staged transition back into the world, I guess you could say. So I was at the lodge, I had the nutritionist doing all that stuff. I was, they make you talk to a shrink, make sure you didn't like go crazy. And like the first night that I came out, that was really strange because I don't think I slept a wink the whole night. It was like, first of all, there's all this shit going on in your head. Like, oh my God, like I actually did this. And the day that they come and get you is really crazy. I mean, they bring a helicopter in, there's people all over the place. And like for 2.5 months, like my whole schedule was set by the turning of the sun. I didn't rush to do anything. And then like the final day comes and then you're like, you got to get these shots and there's a production crew there and doing all this stuff. And so you got all this stuff going around in your head, and then you're in a room, which you haven't been in that. There's like a central heating and air, which is humming. There's people, you can hear stuff. It's not just the wind and the waves anymore. And so
all kinds of stimulus that wasn't there.
Exactly. And so that first night I was just like wired the whole night. I couldn't sleep at all.
The country mouse in the city.
Yeah. And then the other strange thing was when I went in through the airport. So I was in Vancouver International Airport. You know how crazy airports are. People running all over the place. And it's like, I just I had a little bit of a layover there and I found a quiet gate and just sat and watched people. It's just like
sensory overload.
Yeah. You find yourself wondering like, what are these people doing? Like, where are they going in such a rush? And everybody's just frantic, and here you are, just came out of the woods. And, for 2.5 months, like I said, you haven't rushed to do anything, nothing. In fact, you actually intentionally move very, very slowly just to try to conserve those calories. And so it's a very weird kind of a juxtaposition there. With that like crazy airport atmosphere and then like the wilderness, experience on the other side.
That's something I think about often. I saw like a cartoon satirical like newspaper kind of sketch the other day. I think I've seen it before, and it's basically like a person running with like a briefcase and they're like chasing like money and they're basically running into a grave is like what the thing is. They're sprinting through life to run right into a grave with a briefcase full of cash. There was a couple other things to it, but I mean, I've done my own thing my whole life, and it's I I love to people watch. I sit in the airport or the grocery store, especially. We teach breath work in some of our courses, and so I've grown. You're talking about watching animals. I just watch humans' chests or bellies and it's not like I'm even creeping on them. I just see as I'm standing there, like at the checkout, and you can watch people standing, waiting to pay for their groceries or case of beer or whatever. You're like, man, this person's like breathing 2 to 3 times as fast as they need to. They're super unfit just by looking at them. And then they're going to rush home and whatever they just bought, stuff it in their face. And I'm making some assumptions, of course, but you can kind of see it and sit in front of the TV for 2 or 3 hours. And I'm not on some moral high ground like I'm better or haven't been there, but it is an interesting thing. Those Costa Ricans, talking about them again, just in the context of what you just said, those folks don't eat like the best things in the world. They drink, but they live. There's more of them that are 100 years old than most any other spot in the world. They laugh and they go watch the sunset and they sit and play with their kids and they go for walks and they like do real shit. And it's like you use the word juxtaposition. It's like, it's less, it's not more. It's not, I need more gym time or I need more money or I need more in my 401k. It's less. And then they go put their feet in the sand.
Well, while you're talking about that, I'm thinking of the effects of chronic stress on people. And that sounds like a population that just doesn't have to deal with that,
Yeah.
That's, and
choices.
I mean, exactly. Yeah.
So it's a choice. You talking about your time out there. My friend Z Durham, actually, he was just here on the podcast in the studio. One of the guys that works with me in our instruction business, fifth group special operations guys. You regular listeners know Z for certain. He tells a story. First time I heard him tell the story, we were doing a training exercise for 5 days, and it was like 90 degrees in Tennessee and 100% humidity, like the weather you grew up in Florida, right? Every day in the summer. And it's hot and everybody is smoked and we're having like these 12-hour days and guys are kind of starting to get burnt out. And he told a story about being on a deployment in Iraq or Afghanistan or someplace and not having water for several days. And there was no choice because there just was no water and there would be no water until they got back to wherever it was they needed to be. And he talked about remembering how thirsty he was. And this is 15 or 20 years ago, that to this day, every time he tastes cool water, like he flashes back to that moment, like I'm going to die. My throat is like gravel and I'm literally dehydrating to the point that I could seriously die, but I can't stop. And that perspective that it gave him to exactly what you're talking about, to just be without like you had to. It's like, talk about that a little bit. Will that forever have altered you? Do you look at like whiny people that are like, I'm starving and like want to punch them in the face? You don't know shit.
No, I mean, I try not to judge people, but yeah, it is a little bit comical when somebody misses a meal and they say they're starving. It's like, yeah, you got no concept of what you're even saying. But yeah, I mean, you have on this type of experience, you understand intimately the difference between having an appetite and being hungry. Like when you experience that type of hunger, when your body needs food, that's a whole different thing. And most Americans, I think, probably have never gone more than 10 hours without a meal. Maybe when they're sleeping. Most of us eat every couple of hours. And so even to fast for 24 hours or 2 days, I think could be tremendously valuable for people just to kind of first reset and have the health benefit, the whole health benefits of intermittent fasting. But just to have that understanding of what it really means to be like actually hungry. But then you take that to the next level. Like when I was out there, I mean, your body is absolutely depleted. When I got back from being in the woods, when I was at the lodge there and recovering, and they were actually feeding us, it's amazing how fast you gain weight back. When my body was at 140 pounds. I gained probably like 3 pounds in a day just from nutrients that I didn't have that I was then getting. And all of that, your body just sucks that stuff up like a sponge.
Did you have any long-term effects, negative effects of any kind?
No, I lost a lot of muscle when I was out there, and I'm just now starting to get back to where I was 2 years later, before I went out there. I was probably, before I started gaining weight for the show, my walking around weight was 158 to 160. I'd kind of fluctuate around there. I'm at 153 right now. And I don't feel like I'm any leaner. I'm just less muscular. I'm not as big as I was before I started gaining that weight. So,
Pump some iron,
say that again.
Pump some iron.
I've been working out every morning.
Okay. All right. Well, talk about cognition. I mean, we talk about how with just a day or a couple hours, if I don't have enough food, I got to have a midday snack. I got to do this so I can make my brain work. I can't think. How did your thinking get affected? And if so, how did you work through that?
Well, I don't remember it being affected while I was out there, but I can tell you, like now, if I eat in the middle of the day, if I eat breakfast or something, I'm tired during the day. But if I skip breakfast, skip lunch, I'm good. I have energy throughout the day. But if I eat lunch, it's like, it's like, I got to take a nap. And so, if I'm working on something like we're building this thing out here behind the house, like I operate better if I just skip those meals and just eat dinner.
I'm the same way. That's exactly how my body works. Although I know people that have that whole theory of grazing all day long. Business.
No, that wouldn't work for me.
No, me neither. It also takes a lot of time to do that and constantly be stopping to feed yourself.
Yeah.
What's next for you? Like, I noticed on that show, some of the past guests become like, I don't know, interviewers or like kind of host roles. Did you end up doing anything like that?
No. We just got done filming for another show that's airing on the History Channel now, called Alone: The Skills Challenge. And that's basically, so in an episode, they'll have 3 past alone participants, and they give us a challenge. Like they send you a box of tools, like just random shit. And they give you a challenge like, you got to build, like one of the things we had to do was build a watercraft.
Oh.
And so they send you like a couple of very basic things, oftentimes things that just don't make sense. And you got to figure out how to use what you can find on the landscape and then your tools to meet this challenge. And so it's been kind of cool. I've enjoyed doing it. It's pushed me to do things that I probably wouldn't have done. And so that's been fun. I like building things like that.
When you say wouldn't have done, you mean you wouldn't have built some of these things just.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have just gone out there and done it, had I not had that prompt to do it.
Okay. So of course, during this show, you weren't around the other participants, but did you spend any time with them before the show?
So I was in quarantine with Nate. Nate was the helicopter pilot, military guy. Super good dude.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep. Nate's a good dude. So I spent 2 weeks in quarantine with him. And then we were all together at orientation camp. So you got about 10 days of where you're all together, all 10 of you.
So you kind of get to size the other folks up.
Yeah. But it's, what it comes down to, it's like, this isn't really a competition with them. It's not a competition with other people. It's all about you and what you can get done out there. Because there's nothing that you're going to do that's going to influence them. And there's nothing that they're going to do to influence you. I mean, the people who are committed to stay are going to stay until they can't go on any farther. And everyone does the best that they can do. And so, if things work out and you've got the skills for it and the fortitude to get through, you're going to go deep. And so I never really spent much time. Like, I don't think I ever thought about what the other people were doing because it didn't matter to me.
Okay. That was a question I was going to ask. Did you create any relationships with these people after the show?
Yeah. So I talked to Nate on occasion, and then Matt, he was the dude with the dreads. Liz and I went down. He lives in the Virgin Islands, and so we went down and stayed with them for about 2 weeks last year, and then he's coming up to go elk hunting this year, and then we're going to go back down there and take the kids in February, and then there's several other folks that I talked to. I talk to Biko every now and then. He's the bigger guy that was the second one that made me stay there so long.
Yeah. He kept singing.
Oh yeah.
He had a nice voice. Nice voice. I only asked about that because I thought about, I said, size each other up. Like, would you look at this person and be like, like, I wonder what he's doing right now. I probably would use it as leverage in my brain. I'm surmising I can say this in the comfort of the office, but like, man, that Clay guy's probably doing fine. So I must dig in or imagining like you've got some Gilligan's Island shit built with satellite coconuts, and it'd make me want to work harder.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that depends on your personality. Like I said, I was just focusing on doing the best that I could and feed myself the best I could. And I wasn't really worried about what other people were doing.
Okay. Well, clearly it worked because you won.
Yeah, it got me through.
If somebody visits your YouTube channel or your social media, you're on Instagram as well, anywhere else?
So YouTube,
you seem like a TikTok dance kind of guy. You do some TikTok dancing?
Yeah, all the time. Hip hop. I actually started a TikTok, and I think I did like 3 of them and said, nah, that's not for me. Right. So YouTube is the big one. Instagram, Clay Hayes Hunter on Instagram, and then I do have a Facebook thing, but I hate Facebook. I despise it. It's just too much bickering and stuff, so I try to avoid that. But yeah, but YouTube is the big one.
So if somebody's going to go over to one of these 2 channels, what would they get out of it? We talked about it briefly. Like, why should somebody give you a follow and check your stuff out?
Well, I do a lot of survival type stuff, bow hunting, bow making. So I teach people how to make bows on my YouTube channel. And then, so my content, especially on YouTube, kind of shifts throughout the year. So in the fall, so like from September through December or so, there's a lot of Western hunting, mostly bow hunting and things like that. And then I go down to Florida. We do a bunch of hog hunting down there, mostly with bows again. And then in the spring and summertime, I'll do more like, how to shoot a bow, how to make bows, survival type stuff. And then it's back to the hunting type thing again in the fall. And the same kind of Instagram kind of mirrors that a little bit.
Must be nice, Clay.
It's very nice. I'm very, very fortunate.
I hate when people say must be nice to me. I say go do it yourself. I see you've got some good sponsors that you work with. The hat you've got on right there is that Vortex hat.
Yeah. You
work with Kifaru.
Yeah, Vortex Kifaru.
Is that how you say it, Kifaru?
Yeah, they make really good backpacks. The the guy that the head guy there's a former Ranger, good dude. First Light makes camo, Seek Outside tents, all that good stuff. Three Rivers Archery.
What's Three Rivers do? They sell like products to build bows.
Yeah, it's an archery. It's a traditional archery retailer. So I mean, they'll sell longbows, recurves, and basically everything that is in that whole world.
Okay.
Arrows and field tips and fletchings and you name it. Anything associated with traditional archery, they're going to have.
Okay. Best spot to find you, YouTube, Instagram number 2.
Yep.
If somebody never finds you, never crosses your path, never finds you in an airport, never runs into you in a shelter in the woods, what would you leave them with? What would be some words of wisdom you'd pass on to the general public?
Well, there was several pretty profound things that I came to realize when I was out in the woods. First of all, I'd say if you have the opportunity to do it, go spend some time in the woods and just back up from your everyday life. Just take a step back, go spend some quiet time in the woods, and think, question how you live your life, question why you do things the way that you do them. And that was one of that time alone for me in the woods. That was a hugely beneficial part of it, as it gave me that time. It took me out of my everyday life where you're constantly having to, you have responsibilities, you have to get things done. So it like distracts you all the time. And having that time gives you that chance to back up and kind of examine your life from a step removed. That's hugely, hugely beneficial. So if you have the time to do that, you know what? Not even if you have the time, make the time to do that.
Thank you for that.
The other thing is, like, there's one universal thing about the participants that go on this show. Anybody that goes out there and spends a good chunk of time, they come to this one realization that family is the most important thing in the world to them. And I can say that firsthand. That's something that you definitely come to realize. And I mean, like, one of the things that I write about in my book is, for so long, I had taken especially my wife, I had taken her for granted because she's always been there. I've been with my wife since we were 17-year-old kids. And so she's been a constant in my life. And so when something's always there like that, and one of the things I said on the show, it's like your right hand. Mm-hmm. It's like, how many times do you wake up in the morning and say, you know what? I am so grateful that I have this right hand. I am so grateful for that. You don't ever do that because it's always been there and you assume it always will be. And so having all that stuff taken away, it gives you the opportunity to realize that you've been taking these things for granted. And so, yeah, I mean, family's everything. That's really it.
I dig that. What's the book? How do people find the book?
It's called Surviving Alone. You can get it on my website at twistedstave, stave.com, or you can get it on Amazon.
Wait a freaking second. You didn't plug your website until right now when I gave you that opportunity. Twisted Stave.
Slipped my mind. Yeah. There's books on there. There's the bow building book. I got some DVDs. Yeah. And the book about my experience on Alone.
So that's what the book you wrote about, the experience, some of the stuff that we talked about here today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about that. Mostly about, it's not like a survival manual at all. It's just about my experience out there, and a lot of that stuff that we talked about.
I love it. I hope to sometime get to meet you in person, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your backyard shelter building schedule and bow building schedule. I don't have a lot of free time on purpose for screwing around on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel and people are always showing me different stuff. It's amazing to me how many cool people like yourself have gotten to interact with the world because of these platforms. It's fantastic. You can learn how to freaking build hot rods or build bows or make a nice souffle and for free. So I appreciate creators that spend the time, and I know you're getting something out of it, but I know for certain you spent a lot of time doing it, getting nothing in return. And so I appreciate that you persevered doing that.
Yeah. Yep. It's YouTube is amazing. I'm thankful for the platform. Like I said, it allows us to live this lifestyle that we live. And, when I first started, I just did it because I like to do it. I like to make the videos and I like to teach people stuff. Never in a million years would I have thought when I first started my YouTube channel that it would have ever led to anything. I didn't even turn on monetization for like 5 years. And so I was just doing it because I like to.
I know something that's worth talking about before I let you go. Somebody wants to get into archery. What's the best spot to start? What would you tell them? Go to Clay Hayes on YouTube.
Go to Clay Hayes on YouTube. Yeah, there's a lot of shooting videos on there, like how to shoot the bows and stuff like that. But I mean, I get this question all the time. And what I tell people is just, you don't need like a top of the line anything. You just need to go get a cheap bow or a cheap recurve if that's the direction you want to go, or you can get a compound if you want to.
That's not archery.
If you do go with a recurve or a longbow, the one thing that I would say is do not get a bow that's too heavy for you. And that's that's like, especially for dudes, we want to get, I'm big and tough.
Give me that 90 pounder.
Exactly. But even for a guy like, I talk to a lot of guys that switch from compound to traditional, and they might be shooting a 70-pound compound. I'm like, dude, you need to get a 45-pound recurve, because if you go with a 55, 60-pound recurve, first of all, you're using different muscles to draw and hold that bow. And when you do that, if the bow's too heavy for you, you start developing bad habits. And so it's much better to learn on a bow that's well below what you're actually capable of, just so you can develop proper form and, good follow through and all of that stuff. And so I'd say go find a bow. You can find them at yard sales sometimes, or you can, get a cheaper one online, or give Three Rivers a call and tell them what you're looking for, and they can hook you up with something. But just get a bow and start flinging some arrows. Don't worry about, figuring everything out to start with, because there's a lot of stuff to figure out, and you just kind of figure it out as you go.
I like that. I mean, there are some considerations, right? Like, should I shoot aluminum arrows or wood arrows or carbon fiber arrows, and like all that different stuff with numbers on them and spine and length, and it can get daunting.
Yeah, then that's what's great about Three Rivers is you can call them up. They've got guys there that understand all of that stuff, and you can say, I'm completely new, or I've been shooting a compound, and here's my goals. I want to target shoot, or I want to bow hunt, or whatever your goals are. Tell them that stuff, and they can help you pick something that's going to work for you.
Okay, so this ended into a plug for Three Rivers Archery. I've actually visited their website. I bought my son both my kids, actually, I bought them bows from there 5-10 years ago when they were kids. Bought them like some little 20-pound long bows. Beautiful stuff, actually. They've got some nice stuff. Dude, I really appreciate the time. I hope that you guys that have listened got something out of it. I know we talked about a bunch of different stuff, but some pretty serious life lessons in there that I think if you don't get the opportunity, or as Clay said, make the opportunity, think about this shit. I think it was Thomas Carlyle. I know it was Thomas Carlyle that said, silence is the element in which great things fashion themselves together. And I think even this podcast, man, I hate it. Like, because now I am proliferating this desire to plug yourself into a constant flow of information. And I think we need to figure out, even if it's like set times, like in the morning or after work or whatever, to disconnect and go watch the sunset. Like,
there's the one final thing that I want to leave you with is something I hear people say all the time. I got to find the time. or I need to find the time, or it's hard to find the time. I tell you what, you're never going to find the time. You got to make the time. You got to make whatever it is you want to do. You got to make that a priority and make that time, and then just go do it. Don't look for the time, because you're not going to find it.
I think that's about as important a life lesson as anybody could ever have. My mom had 11 babies, and I've heard her say to young couples or older couples that were still talking about having kids, they'd say, well, it's just not like the right time yet. My mom had always laughed, like, it's never the right time to create a living person inside of you and then have to change diapers and not sleep. Like, you will never find an opportune time to do that thing. Like, just do it. And yeah, I dig it. It's we get like so comfortable in the cadence of life that well-worn path. I mean, that's the whole premise of the higher line. When the discussions and the things that we talk about is, it's a path that's up somewhere that's full of thorns and rocks and brambles and sun beating down on you. But like you said, you don't get to see the cool sunsets. Or my nephew and I were up in we were in New Mexico at Taos, the ski resort up there. And of course, we went off trail into the woods and found this. The snow is freaking 8 feet deep. You know, we're at the top of pine trees, and we found this creek. It was spring, and there's still plenty of fresh snow. And we he took his board off. I took my skis off, and we kind of like crawled, because we would have buried ourselves, and found this outcropping in this view with this creek rushing through the forest, ripping through this. It made a ravine of ice and snow that nobody would ever see unless they low crawled through the woods for not far, 100 yards or something. But the groomed trail or crawled through the woods, and we were crawling through all of the tops of these trees. So for the next 4 or 5 days, all I could smell was the spruce on me from them rubbing all on me. I was like, man, that's pretty badass, but I'm not gonna get off the groomed trail.
Yeah, well, you gotta get off the trail every now and then if you want to have some cool experiences.
I think the thing that you just left us with is the thing that most folks it's going to resonate with 5% of people. 90% of them are going to say that's a nice thing, and then another couple percent are going to ponder it for a moment, and maybe they'll do something. And therein lies like the truth of, I think, what men like you, your existence is. Most folks, and this is not a dig on you in the least, most folks will look at you and not get it at all. But there's a handful of people that they're trying to figure the shit out that you're talking about. And, you know, perhaps what you just said was the little match to their Tinder that'll make it happen. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
You're a fire starter.
I hope so.
That's I think the best thing that a person, you talked about for a moment, the thing with your sons. That's a question I ask young men often. What kind of man do you want to be? Like, a legacy. If you died tomorrow, what will people say about you? Not so that they build a monument for you. Like, what do you want them to remember you for? You some bitch in a tent? And not that you need to do heroic, amazing things. Like, what kind of man do you want to be? I think that's a thank you for doing that. Thank you for passing that on. Thank you for going out and making $500,000 and losing a bunch of body weight.
Well, I just had a thought. Hell, I don't know. Slipped my mind again.
I couldn't go without beer for 74 days. That's my problem.
Well, you know, the biggest thing, I do like my beer, but the biggest thing I missed was coffee. No coffee. I like my coffee.
You're taking a bunch in your prison purse. I just taken like a bunch of coffee out there in the old prison purse. That's an asshole, you guys. For any of you that haven't been to prison, and it's a joke. I'm not suggesting that he smuggled. There's that ocelot or whatever that cat is in Africa that or Sri Lanka or someplace. Yeah, you ever had that coffee?
No,
I've had it. My sister brought some home. Yeah, the cat eats the green raw berries on the coffee plant, and then they go pick them up after they go through the cat's digestive tract.
How was that?
It was very acidic. It was definitely not worth like whatever, $100 a pound or whatever the hell it is. But she brought it home and we all made a pot of it and drank it. I'm like, cat ass beans.
So now you can say you've done it.
Yeah, I didn't need to, but I did. You guys that have listened, if you dug this podcast, definitely share it. Go follow Clay, check his stuff out. Teach your boys this stuff. I think sports are good. I think playing football, basketball, I think all that stuff's good. There is nothing like taking a kid and teaching them how to sharpen an axe, and it's not even just because it's like woodsy stuff. It's real shit. Now that kid can sharpen his wife's kitchen knives or his own one day when he's old, or if his car breaks down sometime on the side of the road, he can figure out how to keep his family safe. Teach your kids that shit. You can't keep your family safe with a football.
That we keep bringing up these other topics that spawns these thoughts, but that's a great point. Like one of the things we do with our kids is like, I don't try to solve their problems. If they have a mechanical problem or something that they are facing, I say go figure it out. You know, if you have a question about how to do something, I'll answer the question for you. But like, it's so easy. Like with our kids, if they have a job to do, like it would be 10 times easier just to do it ourselves and freaking get it done. But you know, if you go through like actually teaching them how to do it, they get something out of it. We get the job done. You know, they're learning how to function, how to do things, even as small of things as like ordering their own food at a restaurant. You know, when I was a kid, I was incredibly shy. I would tell my mom that the waitress is standing right there. And I tell my mom, yeah, well, no, it's like, you know, if they try that with me, I'm like, well, tell her, you know?
Yeah.
So just little things like that. Let them do their own thing. Let them make mistakes. That's how you learn.
Oh, look, you cut yourself. Now I'm going to teach you how to stitch yourself. My mother was great about that.
I'm not going to let them chop their foot off.
I know. I'm just kidding. I've watched you do some knife stuff as a carpenter, woodsman myself. I've watched you do some knife stuff on you were making that fire building video. I'm like, man, I clearly see this guy's got knife handling skills, but like you were carving the drill for the fire starting, and you had the stick like this pen in your hand. I just hooked my cable here, and I'm not, this isn't me giving you corrective measures, but I'm like, I was watching it. I was like, you had the knife here and you were using your thumb to push the blade into the stick so you could cut around it, because you were trying to like remove some material. Like some dude's gonna grab a soft piece of wood or something and just plunge that knife right into their thumb. It made me chuckle. I was watching it. You cut yourself much?
No, very, very, very rarely.
I'll send you a link to a video that I did. I sharpen axes quite well. I sharpen tools quite well. And a brother-in-law of mine had a beautiful Swedish handmade axe that I'm at his house, and it looks like somebody used the blade to like pound nails. I'm like, what did you do to this beautiful axe? So I'm like, I'm taking it home. He lives in Colorado. I'm sharpening it. This is disgusting. So I brought it home. I polished it up, and I like put like a mirror finish on it and sent it back to him. And he was grateful. And so somebody else is like, hey, will you sharpen my axe? I'm like, kind of like you with bows. Like, I ain't sharpening all these axes, but I thought I'll make a video, and then people will know how I sharpen these axes. So I'm making the video, and I've got a workshop at home that it's got everything you need. And I've got a badass pair of gloves sitting right there, and I'm talking to the camera and I'm sharpening this axe. And I say, about right now, you should be really careful, because this thing's going to start to be like a razor blade. And right as I say that, I freaking lay this finger open to the bone, man. And I'm like, I'm laughing. I put some pressure on it. I'm like, God damn it. Like, I see the bone. That's the bone. Like I lanced it open. So I push pause. I go glue my fingers shut and wrap it up, and I finish the video. But it's on there. I put it on there of me going, I just cut my finger. What's comical? I mean, I literally said, "About now, be careful." So
Yep.
I don't know why I don't know why I thought about that, but
Well, the making the video thing with blades, it'll get you in trouble sometimes because you're trying to get that right. You're trying to get the camera so they can
the
see
angle
it.
and
Yeah. And so sometimes it'll put you in awkward positions that you wouldn't normally be in.
I have maybe cut myself twice in the last 20 years, significantly like this. So I am careful, but as the amount of idiotic comments I got, it's like, dickheads, I could have edited that out and nobody would have known because but I wanted you to see it because that was like, well, that illustrates why we should be careful. Like we all make mistakes. I brought that up to your point. My mother, so she has 11 kids. My parents made 11 kids. Literally, you wouldn't eat if you didn't help. My mom would quote scripture: if any man doesn't work, neither should he eat. So it'd be like, you're 6 peeling 12 pounds of potatoes, which is a lot of work for little 6-year-old hands. You give me 12 pounds of potatoes now as an adult. I mean, I will challenge any potato. I could win a potato peeling contest or breaking down any vegetable or whatever. Because it was just, you had to do it. In the spring, the sun would warm the earth and she'd hand me and like 4 of my brothers pitchforks and shovels. There was no rototiller. We had a garden that was like over 100 feet long, and we turned every bit of that dirt with pitchforks and shovels.
Those lessons taught you more than how to peel potatoes and turn dirt with a pitchfork, I'm sure.
Yeah. I look at the way some people raise their kids, and I'm guilty of it. My children are grown. I've got a granddaughter now. And I think about some of the things you said, it like, I could just do this. Let's get it done. And I made my kids do a ton of stuff, but there was plenty of times that the opportunity was missed and it was selfish. It wasn't even, I can look back. It's not like I love you so much, I'm going to do this for you. It was, I'm selfish. It'd be a lot easier if I just do this so we can get to whatever we're doing next. And that's shitty parenting is what it is. And that wasn't doing their homework or anything like that, but
yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, it's there's times when I do that too. I mean, just like, you got to get something done. You need to get something done, because it's going to lead to something else. But and my wife and I really look for those opportunities to allow them to figure out things for themselves and to do things and to teach them to do things. I mean, splitting firewood. I mean, I could go out there and split a bunch of firewood, but they're not going to learn hard work and perseverance and how to handle, a blade and all that stuff if I do it for them. So,
there's a fine line too. Once you start talking about dangerous shit, like an axe, I mean, you can cleave a foot in half or your brother's head. So there's a fine line, and firearms, bows, all that stuff, bicycles, where I was at a friend of mine's the other day. He's got a farm. We have a range set up out there that we do some of our filming with the firearm stuff. And as I pulled up, I always walk down by the berm and I make sure that there's no cows that got out or kids out there. And I hear the tractor, and maybe she's 11, is driving a tractor up, big bucket combination tractor with a bucket on it, and her sister's doing something else on a 4-wheeler. They're pulling stuff out of the barn to take up to some animals, and to them that's completely normal. But to so many people, like an 11-year-old on a machine that's like this, hydraulics and controls, and she was cool as a cucumber. She'd been doing it her entire life. And you think about that girl when she's going to be 20 or 30 or 40, it's going to be a pretty badass mom that can get in an RV or any other machine that's on the road. She'll be like, I drove tractors. I picked up hay bales and I did this stuff. Yeah. I joke with all my special operations guys all the time. I say, give me a carpenter and a kid off of a dairy farm or a ranch, and we'll solve any problem you guys could. Maybe not like, like guiding bombs or, like satellite communication kind of stuff, But any problem, you get what I'm saying. We'll
Yeah.
probably sort it. We'll probably sort that stuff.
Well, that's
Just
one of
'cause
the that's one of the great things about being able to grow up on a farm or a ranch or something is like, hell, I was welding by the time I was like 11, you know?
That's cool. That's cool. And it's a lot of times just out of necessity.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't, you're not just running down, you're not hiring somebody to do everything for you. You're doing everything yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What were you welding? Just whatever.
Well, one of the cooler things that I did, I think I was 11 or 12, and we had I had an old go-kart frame, didn't have a motor on it, go-kart frame with a roll cage on it. And we had a tropical storm coming in, and I made a wind powered go-kart out of there was some, I don't know, 1/2-inch conduit or something. I welded up a mast and welded a horseshoe to the top of it and put a big crossbar and put a tarp on it. And I was like hauling ass across the pasture with this thing. And then I'd have to break it all down. And I didn't know how to tack or anything like that, but I had to roll it all up and I'd push it back to the other side and go again.
That's badass.
Just stupid stuff like that.
That's not stupid. That's cool.
Yeah, as an 11-year-old, it is.
I, about that age, maybe 9, made a parachute. And it didn't go well. It didn't go well. I mean, it stayed together, but I didn't quite understand the size that it needed to be for my body weight, and jumping off of a second floor deck. Yeah, it didn't go well. I mean, I was fine. I didn't get hurt, but yeah, I tried it.
Did you learn something?
Yeah, I learned bigger parachutes, more height, and don't be stupid. At that same time, so my parents didn't have cable or anything like that, TV. My grandma had an old, like, 13-inch black and white TV that was in her garage that she let me have. My mom didn't know I had it. I snuck it into the house, but the old house, I couldn't get any kind of like a signal on the rabbit ears. So I went to Radio Shack and I bought a roll of this really fine copper wire, like 1,000 feet of copper wire. It was super fine, like it was for some type of electronics. It was like something you'd use to wrap the windings in a motor.
Yeah.
And I ran out around the house. There was all these big oak trees, and I like teepeeing through the spool, all through the branches. So this copper wire was all through these trees, and I ran it back into the house and connected it to the TV. So, and in essence, I had created a huge lightning rod, not understanding this, and I could get TV signals. I mean, I had 1,000 foot of wire all through the trees. I got channels from wherever. I was like watching shit from Singapore. I'm exaggerating, but I got all the channels. And then one day there was a bad storm and it blew that TV up. So yeah, there's some stupid stuff like that.
Well, that's how you learn. I did something very similar with a CB radio and a TV antenna at my house.
You wired the CB to the
TV antenna.
Did it get shocked? Did it get hit by
It didn't get zapped, no, but it like I didn't have a normal CB antenna, so I don't know, I just like stuffed. I can't remember exactly how I did. I think
work?
It did. It like I stuffed some wire into where the coax cable connects and ran it through my window up to the rabbit, whatever those big array, antenna arrays that you used to have for a TV.
What was your handle?
It worked. Hell, I can't remember. That's been a long time ago.
I bet it's tattooed on you, and it's probably the license plate on your pickup truck. Yeah, you know what it is. That's funny. Hey, man, I really appreciate you. You guys that have watched, go give this guy a follow. Take this stuff to heart. Don't be dickheads. Go take your kids outside, throw some axes at trees, shoot some deer, eat some meat, maybe forego a meal. That's what I got. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.
Said I got me some gunfighter gun law. Gunfighter gun law, baby. Gunfighter gun, oh, no more gunfighter blues. Made in the USA. Amazing lubricity. 100% synthetic, baby. So it's gonna last you longer. So go on CarryTrainer.com and order yourself some gunfighter gun or gunfighter lube to get rid of your gunfighter blues. I said go on and order yourself some gunfighter lube. Take my gunfighter lube. Yeah!